5 years. So we spend so much time asking significant others these questions. But what about if we were to spend more time with God and he were to really shape us and mold us in who he has ordained us to be, and then we begin to ask him those questions? God, where do you see me in 5 years? God, what career path do you want me to take? God, is it your will that I have kids, or is it not your will that I have kids? So instead of us focusing so much on man, we begin to shift our perspective and we begin to shift our prayer life so that our focus is in alignment with Christ. So using our time wisely in order to strengthen ourselves with Christ is something that I think all of us can continuously work on that. And you can always start with baby steps. You know, on my way to work, I live in Goodyear, and I drive to Levine every day, and I don't take the freeway. I take the back streets, and so I have about a 30-minute drive, and I had just downloaded this app called The Brook. It's a really, really nice app that has sermons, and it's a series. So every day I'll listen to a part of the series every day, and that'll just be my think time. That'll be my worship time. And before I get out of the car, I make sure that I pray. And I have just meditated with God. We have to be intentional. I intentionally make sure that I start and play before I get out of the driveway. Life happens. Life gets hectic sometimes. But we have to be intentional. You're intentional about waking up every day and going to work, right? So we need to be intentional about where we're putting God in our lives. The virtuous woman is mothering. And this is something that, I thought about because I'm not a mother, and I thought about how I can continuously implement this into my life, because the first thing that I think of course, when I think of mothering, I think of being a mother, right? But that's inaccurate. That's inaccurate. And according to Webster's, the definition for mothering is one who brings up a child with care and affection. That's how Webster's defines being a mother, right? It doesn't say that you birthed the child. It doesn't say anything to that capacity. It just speaks of you raising a child with care and affection. So I think about the women in my life. Of course, I think of my mother, but I also think about the women in my life that have played a role and that I have treasured and that they have an impact on my life. So when my mother wasn't around, maybe she was out of town, maybe she, had to do something else, care for a family member. Those other women in my life, they sought me out and made sure that I was okay. Whether I needed a meal for that night, whether I needed mentoring, whether I needed counseling, or just someone to talk to, or just sometimes we just need someone to call us and just say, hey, I was thinking of you. Sometimes we need that, right? And so it's always nice to be thought of. It's always nice to be thought of. So I think about those women. I think of teachers. I think of principals. I think of first ladies. I think of women who want children so bad that they are willing to raise and help raise other people's children. So I think of that as a description of being mothering. And then as I begin to research more and more about the topic mothering, I begin to realize that I already display that quality, right? I'm a teacher, and I'm a mother to maybe, last year, maybe 30 students. I was the counselor, I put the Band-Aid on, I was the nurse, I was you name it. We were everything. And so when I begin to look at it through that lens, God encouraged me to know that you are on track. You are on track, and that you can still have that mothering spirit and not have any children at all. You can still do that. And I think that some of us get discouraged, especially women that really want to have children. And we have to sometimes shift our focus and not focus so much on not having a child, but focus on the fact that our mission may be greater than having a child. It could be something so much greater. And we miss that blessing sometimes when we're so focused on having a child. Now, as an educator, my principal, they would always say to us, you can never have a favorite. None of these students are your favorite. But we know that's not true. We know that sometimes we have a favorite, and I had a favorite throughout my career, and his name was Mr. Carlos, and he was a student with autism, and he had made so much growth socially when he was in my presence, and I loved Carlos. He was funny, he was hilarious, he was smart, he was witty, and he loved him some Miss Grant. You know, we were inseparable. You know, if you saw him, you saw me. We'd have lunch together, we'd laugh together, and I remember his mom was always afraid for a transition for him. You know, he always had anxiety when moving to the next grade level and having to, you know, take to a different teacher. And so at that point, my principal had set me down and he told me, I was teaching second grade at that point in time, he told me that he wanted me to move to third grade. So a lot of times when you make a shift like that, you just take your class with you, and we call that a loop. So you loop with your whole class to the next grade level. And so after I found out that information, I began to sit down all my parents one by one, and I conference with them, and I let them know that, you know, that their child would be going with me to the next grade level. And when I got to Carlos's mom, she cried and cried and cried because she was so grateful, and she knew that he wouldn't have to go on through that transition. And so Carlos and I had another journey together until it finally came to an end, and it was the last day of school, the last day of third grade, and he was going to go into fourth grade, and Miss Grant couldn't loop again, you know, so we had 2 years, and that was it. And the emotion that he had just overwhelmed my spirit. It was nothing like it. You know, it took about 8 hours for his family to calm him down. They had to move furniture around the house and make sure that he didn't escape. So when I thought about it, I say, wow, look at the impact that you can have on someone that's not even directly related to you. All of us have a mothering spirit that we need to really tap into, because God has called us to do that as virtuous women of God. The virtuous woman is a homemaker. You don't have to be a wife and be a mother to have a sweet home, right? You can welcome people in, you can have gatherings, you can let people know. I know Ms. Dees came up here and she described my mom and talked about, you know, when you come into her house, you don't have to worry about anything. And that couldn't be a truer statement. You don't have to worry about anything. If you need to spend the night, if you need a meal, if you need to stay 2 extra nights. She was a homemaker. She's a homemaker, right? And we can all do that. That doesn't encompass being a wife or being a mother. We can all make our homes peaceful places where people want to come to. And the main thing that I wanted to hone in on was the virtuous woman is a woman who tithes. This is the area I need to work on. So this is why I wanted to hone in on it, because it's going to be refreshing as I deliver it to you. So being able to budget is great, and I think the component to being a virtuous woman, the greatest one, is tithing. The Bible teaches us to tithe 10%, and it teaches us to give back. So the first aspect of displaying financial stewardship is to be obedient with our first fruits. And that doesn't mean, you know, hey, let me budget. I got this. I got my Macy's credit card paid off. I got this. I got this. Okay, now that's left, so I'm going to give that to God. That's not our first fruits. That's not what our first fruits are. Our first fruits are looking at everything that we've brought in and giving God a direct reflection of 10%. That's what tithing is. Anything short of that is not tithing. And so we really need to understand that and be intentional through our tithing. And as you do that, God is going to give you a word. He's going to show you. There may be times where you pay for things and you realize, I don't even know how I made ends meet this month. I don't even know how I did it, but God knows. God knows. And as we continue to spend time with him, as we continue to be obedient to his will, he will show us more and more as to how we need to be tithers and financially budget. The virtuous woman controls her tongue. When I stepped into this position as an assistant principal, I had so many negative thoughts in my mind, especially as a 28-year-old. I had only taught for 6 years. I had only taught second and third grade. I thought to myself, I haven't taught enough grade levels. Right now I'm at a school that's K-8. I haven't taught enough grade levels. I don't know the content standards for first, for fourth grade, and so on. I only know my grade levels. I've only taught for 6 years, and I'm 28 years old. I don't know if I'm ready for this. But then I could not ignore that something in my spirit, even in January, something kept poking at me and kept telling me, 2016 is the year that I want you to step out of your comfort zone. 2016. And it kept poking at me. And no matter how much I tried to deny it, it was ever present. And so I did what God asked me to do. And I tried my best to interview. And I didn't get the first job. I didn't get the second job. And God placed me exactly where he wanted me. And we're 5 weeks into the school year. And the relationships and the mothering relationships that I'm able to have over these students is unbelievable. And he put me at a school that I feel has the greatest need for a young Black African-American woman that's young and of my stature. I feel like this is where he placed me for a particular reason. And so I thank God for that. I don't question him anymore. There may be times where I'm scared, where I don't want to go to work, or when I get out, I stay in the parking lot and I say, well, let me pray a little bit longer. Lord, just get me through this day, one day at a time. One day at a time. Don't get me through the week. I need you to get me through this morning. Every day. That's my prayer. Every single day. And God still has me holding on. And so I would encourage you today to I know that was a long story. That was a long little bit of my life. But as I was writing this, I began to get closer and closer and closer to God, because I was able to see where he's brought me from. I was able to see what he's brought me through. And I was also able to dissect those attributes and say, you know what, I'm not too bad. I need to work on this area and this area and this area. And I'm going to keep working over and over and over. And maybe next year, I'll take another inventory of Ashley. I'll take another inventory of me. And I'll realize where I need to be there as well. So I would encourage you today to just shift your prayer life. Be intentional with being the virtuous women that God has called us to be, and never give up, never be discouraged, because every day is a continuous journey to who God has called us to be as young women. God bless you.